Yes, I have returned. It's been too long since my last podcast. I did some traveling, again. I picked up a cold, which trashed my throat, and finally I'm able to sound somewhat normal. Your patience will be rewarded because if you enjoy listening to these stories of those in the wine industry and what they craft, today is a doozy. 3 interviews in nearly an hour's time. Let's go.
My first vintage was in 2001, and until then I never made wine. And in 2001 I made almost 2,000 cases of wine. Wow. So it was going from nothing to 2,000 cases.
The value for quality that you can find in the Sierra Foothills and El Dorado is astounding. You can find highly rated wines, you can find highly interesting wines, you can go down the list and you find quality wines at all price points.
Once I started getting into wine and started learning more and more, I kept finding myself coming back here and going, how can I apply what I'm learning to the Sierra Foothills?
Today, as you listen from the comforts of your couch, automobile, or treadmill, you'll travel with me to the El Dorado County wine region in the Sierra Foothills. And though you won't feel it, we'll experience sunshine, rain, and snow. But that's what keeps my travels compelling. These 4 vintners are distinctly different. They are Chaim and Elisheva of CGDRE Vineyard and Winery, Kevin Jones of Lava Cap Winery, and Adam Smith of Skinner Vineyards and Winery. All offer a good variety of wine and are the nicest people you'll ever want to join to share a bottle, some laughs, and stories. My first interview from El Dorado County is CGDRE. And that's the letter C, the letter G, D-I, and then Arie, like Aries without the S. It's a play on owner Chaim Arie's name. His wife Elisheva is co-owner, and these two are fascinating people with admirable backgrounds. Elisheva is an accomplished artist, both in fine arts and dance, and we'll hear from her in a bit. Chaim was born Turkish, but spent much of his younger life in Israel. They were having a club party the day I stopped by, and I was able to catch up with them prior to them getting busy with the lovers of their wine. The first thing I said to Chaim is I found it interesting that he said he spent 35 years preparing himself for the role of winemaker. It was a long, involved road, but he got there.
All right, yeah. Well, we wanted to get into the wine business much earlier, I came to the United States when I was 26 and went to graduate school at the University of Illinois and got a PhD in food science. And then I moved to Chicago and worked for the Quaker Oats Company.
I want to say first, though, you had a BS in chemical engineering as well prior.
From Israel, from the Technion, yes. And and then at the U of I, actually, I got a master's degree and a PhD. I came here, I didn't know whether I was going to stay for many years. I thought maybe I'll stay for a couple of years, so I better get my master's.
Wow.
And so I got my master's, and then they talked me into staying longer.
And you got a job at Quaker Oats.
And then I got a job at Quaker Oats, yes.
Creating much of what my generation grew up eating. And I wanted to say, and may the 10-year-old boy inside of me shake your hand for creating Cap'n Crunch.
Well, yeah, actually, I worked on this project in the 60s. And, it wasn't so glamorous as it sounds. And it became a lot more important in my life after I became a winemaker. Right. So people reminded me, hey, you did this and you did that. Yeah, and so I did that. So now I'm making wine.
Right. Tell me briefly about some of the products you made. I saw pudding cups.
Yes, I worked for Del Monte, and Del Monte, we had a project for putting many different products in single-serving aluminum cans. This was for lunch. Right. They called it Little Lunch. Little lunch. And so I put puddings, gelatin desserts, fruit, different fruits in little containers.
I think I had some of that in my lunchbox when I was a kid.
You did, yes. This was maybe you were 15.
Could be 10, 12.
Yeah.
Well, and I talked to a lot of winemakers who have received other degrees, not the typical enology or viticultural degrees, and maybe biology, and they say it still helps them in their winemaking process. And I imagine with the food science degree, that really helps you look at wine in a different way.
Yeah, it does. Actually, wine is a food. Mm-hmm. And the basic subjects that you need to know in making wine is microbiology, biochemistry, and food technology. It's
sure, it helps,
it does. And so to me, the manufacturing part of winemaking, I always felt like I've done this. My first vintage was in 2001, and until then I never made wine. And in 2001, I made almost 2,000 cases of wine. Wow. So it was, going from nothing to 2,000 cases.
Were you taking any kind of classes, at least on how to develop your knowledge into winemaking?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I went to Davis, and for a couple of years, not, taking, I didn't get a degree, but I took many classes in enology and also in viticulture.
Oh, great.
Actually, the farming part, I'm also a farmer, and I believe that if you want to make good wine, you better be a good farmer. And the farming part was more difficult, to get into this kind of life of the agriculture.
Sure. Yeah, but if you learn that as well, it certainly helps you with your winemaking.
You can. I always say that if you want to make good wine, you got to start with good grapes. You can start with good grapes and make a lousy wine, but not vice versa.
Right. I hear that a lot. He's Chaim Arie of Arie Vineyard and Winery. Chaim, with his extensive knowledge, was inspired to design a dual-compartment submerged cap fermentation tank, a design that he has submitted for a patent. You may be aware that as the red grapes ferment, the yeast turns the sugar into alcohol and CO2 gas. It's very active, and grape skins and pulp and other material float to the top of the tanks. There it begins to harden. So in smaller production wines, the winemaker or cellar workers need to break up that cap or pump juice over it to allow the material to integrate with the juice for color and flavor. Well, Chaim's 8-ton dual-compartment submerged fermentation tank holds that cap under the juice, so no punch-down or pump-overs are needed. It's also a less aggressive way to treat the juice. It's quite a concept, and one that he hopes will catch on.
And I would like to see, actually, my system work not with an 8-ton fermenter, but with a 100-ton fermenter.
Right, sure.
And to see what will happen.
And getting back to what you were talking about being gentle with the juice, as a winemaker, when you designed this facility, you created the gravity flow process that also softens the touch and is not as aggressive.
Yes. See, gravity flow, it enables, it does not require pumping. See, if you take if you take the grapes, you destem them, you crush them, and then by gravity you drop them into the tank. This doesn't require any pumping. But if you have all this happening on the same floor, and then you need to pump, then the pump will be very aggressive with the fruit, and then it's going to macerate skin and break down the seeds. So you're getting harsher flavors that. In my style of wine, I like to emphasize the varietal identity of the wine, and I want people that understand wine to be able to identify what variety they're tasting.
Co-founder, owner, winemaker, Chaim Arie of El Dorado County's Arie Vineyard and Winery. On their website, there's a photo of him that makes him appear to be a tough, rebellious cowboy. But as you can hear, he's quite the pussycat. At this point, I asked him about the description of his wine that I saw on his website, which is highly extracted, soft, and elegant. But I mentioned that some people may not prefer highly extracted wine. And after tasting his wine, I do agree with this explanation.
Okay, well, when I say highly extracted, some people may think that what I mean highly extracted is sweet wines. Fruit has the connotation of sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they think that I am making sweet wines. I make dry wines. I don't like sweet wines. My wines are very dry, but on the other hand, they are fruity.
Fruit forward.
They're fruity, and you get the perception of sweetness.
Right, there is that perception, and I understand what you're saying exactly. On the other hand, you do make a couple of ports too, don't you?
Oh, but port is different, okay? Yeah, port, you want to make ports that's sweet. Yeah, absolutely. But there's a balance. See,
Sure.
To me, balancing the wine is probably the most important part of making a wine that pleases. See, I like to make wines that please people.
And I'm impressed that you use the authentic Portuguese grapes as well, and they're grown right here on the property.
I do, yes. I actually grow Touriga Nacional, which is 50% of the port. It's a major port varietal, and I love to also make a dry wine from Touriga Nacional.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have a 1 acre field blend of 5 Portuguese varieties, so which make the other 50% of my ports.
All right.
So I blend the Touriga Nacional with the other 5, and I make my port.
I ended up getting the tawny port and really enjoyed it. I drank some that cold, snowy night in my hotel room in Camino, and yes, it was pleasing. When I first arrived and sat in Chaim's office, his wife Elisheva was there as well, and she began telling me their story, and I wasn't recording yet, so I had to have her start over because I really liked how she explained the winery and the wine region.
When we conceived this project, as an artist, I'm a painter, and I have a master's in fine arts, and I would go to art retreats, and they were always very special because they created in me a deeper thinking and desire, and to be able to reflect, and be in repose. And I wanted for people to have that experience with wine. So when we built this place, we built it never to be a tasting room. We built it to be a place that people can come and be with nature. We bought 209 acres. They were forested, highly forested, and our vineyards are in between forests, and we didn't clear land. So the idea was that people will come here and have a life with wine because wine is in your life. And wine, it tells your narrative. It tells its narrative together with your narrative. And what a wonderful place this could be where people can come and, as I said, have an amalgamation of experiences with wine, because it is an anthropological product, a social anthropological product. So people can have wine and look at paintings, and I created the paintings, and they can relate to the artist, so they meet also the artist as the painter. And then they can sit outside in the veranda and look at forests and see hawks and all kinds of animals and reflect on that while they're having wine.
You told me you didn't want this place to be a drive-by tasting place where they pop in and then move on.
Right.
But you were definitely a destination winery because I wouldn't say you're way off the beaten path, but you're not right on the path.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that once we realized after a year or two that people they loved it and wanted to come in the middle of the week, we started looking for a tasting room. And everybody says, well, you have a place. Why are you looking? Well, because there is the drive-by experience, which is very injectious, and then there is the very reflective experience. Mm-hmm. And so I've separated that out.
We have another facility.
And where's that facility?
On Shenandoah School Road. If you take that loop from Shenandoah Road, there's Shenandoah School Road, where Will Dorado and Terra de Oro and Cooper are there.
Okay.
So we are a winery that we're both in El Dorado and Amador. I sit on the board of the Amador Vintners Association, and I'm on the board, executive board of the El Dorado, and I'm also a member at large on the board of the Wine Institute. I really care about the region. I really, really think it is an undiscovered, secret, incredible region. It really
Seems like more and more people are finding out about it, and it's convenient how close Amador is to the El Dorado area, too. I mean, it doesn't take too long to get from one to the
Absolutely.
other. So you have two wonderful wine regions within just minutes.
Yeah, it's a very organic flow here from all the aviations, from all the AVAs. And it ties in the Sierra Foothills. And I would say the entire Sierra Foothills, which is about nine aviations, we're about 270 wineries. So, we're still considered a small community, but large enough to accommodate the visitors, but small enough to still be a community.
And large enough that there's more to do than you can do in a weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Which keeps them coming back.
Yeah. You have the river rafting. You have a lot of the stone fruits here, Apple Hill, the river rafting. You have fly fishing. You have a lot of things to do. The nice thing about it in terms of wine, and it seems like I'm giving you the El Dorado tourism spiel, or the wine spiel. But anyway,
You're talking like a board member.
Yeah, exactly. No, the nice thing about El Dorado, especially, is that you can start at 900 elevation, and the last winery, which is in Georgetown, is 3,600 elevation. You virtually traverse the entire varietal map of the world in terms of climate and soils.
I never realized that.
In the car, maybe within a half an hour drive.
I was thinking that would be a wonderful tour for cyclists.
It is, and they have an annual 100-mile cycling here.
Yeah, it would be quite a bicycle trip, but how fun to experience it slowly like that.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you for adding that part to the interview.
Welcome. You're very welcome.
I did want to say, I saw that you grew up on a kibbutz.
Yes.
So, in a sense, you've come full circle because now here you
You're
are.
the only person that said that besides me. I can't believe it.
You're a farm girl again.
Well, here's the deal. So let me tell you a little bit about me and how ironic it is that I'm here. I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, and my parents came underground to Israel as they were hidden as children and came to Israel underground. And anyway, I grew up in a kibbutz. I grew up in a time when people were building the country. And so the children, because there was lack of labor, children were harnessed to work in the fields together with the adults. Right. You went to school, and education was very important, but because Israel is hot, you started very, very early in the morning. You worked in the fields with the adults until 9 or 10, and then school started. Okay.
It's a communal proper situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I grew in a socialist, very, very strict socialist environment. Although I must say I live here quite a capitalist life. But at any rate, we immigrated to San Francisco when I was 13 because my mother discovered that her father survived, and he came to the United States via Shanghai. My parents are Austrian, so a lot of German and Austrian Jews were getting visas to go to Shanghai. And from Shanghai, it was very natural after the war that they came to the United States. So my grandfather offered us all visas, and we came
now,
here.
Did he know that she had survived, his daughter?
No, he didn't know until after the war. Wow. So they discovered each other when I was still a small child. And so he brought us over, and of course, he lived in San Francisco, so I was never an Israeli that lived in New York. Well, we moved straight from the kibbutz to San Francisco. Wow. And it was after Christmas, a day before New Year. Never seen a Santa Claus in my life. And I thought, wow, this is a crazy country. They're all walking around with these costumes. Oh, yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, what a culture shock for you.
Exactly.
I mean, entirely, though. It's a big city and everything.
So, but I started dancing. I danced with the Oakland Ballet, and then I started being introduced to wine. And I would go to Napa a lot when Jordan was getting built and Mondavi, and concerts started. I'm 71 years old, so I've seen it all. I became passionate about wine. Passionate, right. Pazzo, crazy about wine.
Well, congratulations on having the chance to build your dream. I think you've done an outstanding job here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I feel very contented.
Wow, what a story they both have to share. You can learn more about them on their website, cgdiarie.com. It was a real pleasure to sit with Chaim and Elisheva. Next, we're going to travel about 1,000 feet higher in elevation to visit Lava Cap as we continue on the Wine Road. We're back on the Wine Road, just days before my sojourn to Dorado County in the Sierra Foothills. They received quite a bit of rain, as we here closer to the coast have received, even a good amount of snow. There are a few pictures on my website that show images of the snow, including the vineyard at Lava Cap. The photo of me on the deck is taken in the rain with Kevin Jones of Lava Cap, and he's my next guest. It's an all hands-on-deck family venture that began in 1981. Kevin is the marketing manager and assistant operations manager, and he's the third generation to work the vineyard and winery. His dad, Charlie, is the owner and vineyard manager, and his brother Emmett assists his father. Brother Nolan handles quality control, and his sister Elsie takes care of local sales. Joe Norman is the winemaker. No, he's not a Jones. I met nearly all of the family, though, including Noreen, Kevin's mother, the day I was there. They, too, were having a club party with numerous wine and food stations. Kevin was kind enough to join me at a table to talk about their operation. And their barrel room is huge, certainly large enough to handle a big party.
Yeah, it's fun because it's, you get a wine club shipment and you really want the wines to shine, but it's hard for people to they haven't tasted them against food. They get to taste them against food, maybe plan a meal around them and see if they have any aging potential and go from there.
Yeah, I was impressed with the size of this barrel room, which led me to ask how many cases you're doing, and pretty good size.
Yeah, so this barrel room is 10,000 square feet, and we do about 20,000 cases of wine a year out of this facility. It's pretty cool. I mean, to have this size barrel room in this area, I don't think there's a lot of them in the Sierra Foothills that have the capacity to get this much aging room in here, so it helps out a lot.
And it's a real family business, so everybody chips in, don't they?
Yeah, no, we have, me, my brother, my sister, my mom, and my dad here every single day. And then my grandmother, who's 88, actually still comes in probably 5 days a week. And she lives close to the farm, so she comes over and comes in and makes sure that we're keeping the ship in the right direction.
Or is she one of those old-timers that sits in the corner and tells the stories?
Oh, yeah, no, she likes to tell the stories, and then she always wants to make sure that the money's counted right. Okay. So she's
still in control in a sense.
She has a very astute vision on wines produced up here, and quality being the kind of the paramount aspect to everything that we try to do here.
What inspired her and your grandfather to start this business back in 1981?
So my grandfather was a geology and geophysicist. He was a teacher at Cal Berkeley, and he had his whole career he had been at the USGS, really putting together a lot of the base information for plate tectonics in the 70s and 80s with a couple other guys. And so they always had anything, a huge interest in anything that had to do with the earth, geology, birds, anything that had to do with nature he loved. And I think the idea of just farming was something that was always on his list. So in the late 1970s, they looked for property all over the state, Amador, Calaveras, Napa, Sonoma, but they really settled on the Sierra Foothills, I think, one, because of the beauty, the elevation, and the unique volcanic features that we have up here. Here at Lava Cap, we have it's basically a young volcanic material. It's a petrified lahar flow, and this material is only 4 to 10 million years old. So in the geologic,
way young, huh?
Way young. But the cool thing about the material is it was once ash. So people think Lava Cap, it's lava. It's actually ash flows, and these ash flows decompose quite quickly for a rock and provide the soil just an extremely unique soil type. It's typically found at higher elevations, and if you think about these eruptions, kind of like Mount St. Helens, where you have these eruptions coming down. You have these fingers of these flows that kind of push out, and very few push out far from the mountains in elevations that are viable for commercial grape growing. So this is one of the few areas in California that actually has the lava cap and an elevation that you can commercially grow grapes. So.
What is the elevation here?
So the winery's at 2,650. The bottom of the farm is 2,300 and the top's 2,800. Between the soils, the amount of moisture we get here on the west slope of the Sierra Nevada it's a forest up here. You get pines, Doug firs, cedars, and oaks. It's a beautiful place, but you have the mountains, the terrains. There's very, very few flat areas in El Dorado County, especially for agriculture, and especially in this elevation for viticulture. You see, you see some people always talking about these wide expanses of vineyards you find across California, and realistically in the foothills, there's very few even feasible places because of the mountainous terrain. And so you get all these vineyards that are on the slopes, and with those slopes comes that change in elevation. We have a vineyard that goes from, it's probably about 2,400 and it goes to 2,800 feet in elevation. That change, it offers a huge array of ripening characteristics. We'll pick the bottom. It gets a pretty decent amount of sunshine. We'll pick that 2 to 3 weeks earlier than the top just because of the temperature difference. It allows the profiles, I think, of the wine to have more complexities. You have same grape, same rootstock, same soil type. As you get towards the top, you may get a little rockier, but that variation in slope allows us to build these wines with complexity.
So do you ferment them separately and then blend later?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll ferment all our lots separately depending on what we deem is ripe at the time that we harvest. We'll go through and we'll ferment all these lots separately, usually all small lot fermentations, and then we age them separately. And then when we go through our final blending process, we want a wine that has those characteristics that you're not just having a wine, or a red wine. You're having a wine that says, hey, these are grapes that are grown in El Dorado County. These are the intense flavors, and these are nuanced wines. They're not wines from a region that maybe you're just getting one dominant profile. You're getting quite a range across the taste profile.
But I imagine you get some nice minerality to your wines, and I'm guessing the Rhone varieties that you grow and bottle probably showcase that more than the Italian and Bordeaux varieties.
Oh, I think so. And you hear that, the term minerality. Some people say, oh, you can't taste the minerality and this and that. And I think that the really neat thing about the wines and the minerality is it's an intensity, and it's kind of a flinty, really kind of an intense wet rock, but you get that richness in the wines that I think any region could really appreciate. But I think especially for this region, that it's a characteristic. The intense flavors are backboned with that minerality.
I think you can definitely taste it.
Right.
I remember as a kid, the way the basement smelled.
Exactly.
And that can translate to a flavor profile in a sense. And I've had some wines where it's like, wow, it kind of took me back there. Or another one that I've used before, it's like wet gravel driveway.
Right. Yeah, or you smell that, a fresh rain and you're out on a gravel driveway. You smell that and you go, and it's those characteristics that make a wine interesting, and I think there's so many different aspects in El Dorado AVA that make the wines interesting that, you can get lost up here finding the minerality from a decomposed granitic soil to a volcanic soil to a really deep and rich sedimentary soil.
Let's talk about the varieties you bottle. I mentioned the 3 regions, but Tell us about the ones you're growing.
So we grow quite a few. We grow Bordeaux. We have Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot. We have quite a bit of Rhone varieties. We have Syrah, Grenache, Marsanne, Roussanne, Petit Syrah. Kind of go down the list there. We have Italian varieties. We have Barbera, Dolcetto. You find a spot up here, and you find a spot that can do it well, and you have the right rootstock, you have the right clone, and you make sure those grapes, ripen. You can make some pretty dang good wines. And I think
apparently a great variety of them.
Yeah, exactly, and a great variety of them. And I think that's always been a kind of a difficulty of the Sierra Nevada foothills, and it's El Dorado AVA is, what do you hang your hat on? What exactly is a variety that you take and market as kind of the pinnacle of your showcased wine? And everyone's making a great examples of each variety. And everyone has kind of their fond little following of these varieties. You get a huge array of varieties made well and interesting wines.
What do you think you're best known for?
Oh, well, we have our wines that we sell a lot of. We sell quite a bit of Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon, and people come to Sierra Foothills and Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon, and our Chardonnay typically will gets good scores in the wine enthusiasts, 92s, 93s. Our Cab got a 93 this year, and I think people are kind of taken aback at the range of those wines you can grow. Our Cab Franc is starting to gain a really good following, but I think if you have a quality producer, some production facilities that can put out a quality wine, and they're making sure they're getting grapes from quality vineyards. The grapes are there, the fruit's there, the winemaking's coming around for the Sierra Foothills and El Dorado, and Syrahs around here are tasting really nice. Grenaches.
I'm enjoying your Grenache right now, and it's got some nice acidity to it. Certainly a really good food wine.
Yeah, it's. My dad calls it the Pinot of the mountains, because everyone comes up here and says, "Hey, I'm looking for some Pinot," and
keep looking.
Yeah, keep looking. And a lot of people don't understand, I think, the very specific requirements for producing a high quality wine, and Pinot, the specific requirements are not found too commonly up here. But Grenache can be made in a lot of different styles up here. It's a lighter bodied, very nice strawberry rose petal, and it's a delicate wine. It's a nuanced wine that's an amazing wine with light foods.
And probably the best option when you don't have Pinot Noir around is to go to the Grenache.
Exactly. Yeah, it's you go to Spain and you taste some of the Grenaches there, and they're inky and dark, and I think you come up here and you taste, in California you taste some of the Grenaches, and they have a nuanced characteristic up here that where they're ripe they have the flavors, but the body is just really elegant, clean, profound, delicate flavors.
And I saw you make Angelica, which I really enjoy. Are you using Mission grapes for that?
So it's an Angelica style.
That's right. You had that word style following.
Yes, and so what we do is we use Marsanne Roussanne grapes. We have those planted at the very top of our vineyard, which is 2,800 feet in elevation, and they ripen quite late. And so what we do with those is we pick them, we press them, and then we add our brandy to them, and it's a pretty amazing wine. It's amazing flavors, very kind of honeysuckle, honey, light little almond nuances. But I mean, you can afford to do that in like Sierra Foothills. You can afford to grow Barbera. You can afford to grow Sangiovese and produce wines that are still affordable. It's an area where you can have quite an array of vineyards and different varieties, because we're not getting $10,000-$12,000 a ton for fruit, and you can afford to do these different varieties.
Well, I think that's a good descriptive word to describe the region and the wines that are made here. I mean, you have a great variety of wines, but they're also affordable.
Oh yeah, it's the value for quality that you can find in the Sierra Foothills and El Dorado is astounding. You can find highly rated wines, you can find highly interesting wines, you can find wines that aren't rated. You can go down the list and you find quality wines at all price points.
Yes, if you have not been to the El Dorado or Amador counties yet, you will likely be surprised with the quality of the wine and the prices of many of the wines. As I mentioned earlier, he's a third-generation family member. The fourth is on the way, so the family operation will continue.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely a family affair. I think, the wine industry in general, you have so many of these family operations because it's agriculture, and we all grew up on the farm, and you'd feel naked without this being in your family and without having this seeing this every day. It's something you really grow to appreciate. Maybe not every day, but 99.9% of the time. It's huge, and it's the industry where the race never finishes. It's there's always something better to a way to make a wine better, or more audience to get in front of.
Kevin Jones of Lava Cap Winery. At this point, I asked him, "Is there any other topic you'd like to talk about?" And he presented this interesting response.
I don't know. What do you think? From an outsider's point of view, what is an outsider's point of view of the Sierra Foothills right now?
Well, that's a good question, and it's nice to actually have somebody ask me a question for a change. I see this as it's not a new region by any means, but it's a burgeoning region that's still growing, and I think with each passing year, you guys are getting some wonderful winemakers down here, and they're learning more and more. And it's going to rival any of the top regions in the country, in the world for that matter. I think Napa and Sonoma are going to have a challenge when you guys get that popular, because you can keep your prices low, at least for now.
Right.
Eventually, as popularity grows, and certainly vineyard managers and vineyard owners are going to be raising their prices, right. And who knows what's going to happen there. But for now, like I said, you guys are an affordable region that is making exceptional wine.
Yeah, I know. I always tell people, my wife, we're driving around, I'm like, this would be a perfect spot for a vineyard. This would be a perfect spot for a vineyard. You find all these cool soils and aspects at the perfect elevations, and it's a little hidden secret. And I think a lot of winemakers who get their fruit up here like it to be like that because it's affordable. You can make some astoundingly interesting wines. Just complex and different, different than what other people are used to, I think.
Find out more about the winery at lavacap.com. Kevin from the Jones family. Thanks to him for his time and inviting me to the party, which was kind of wrapping up as we started our conversation. Right now, I'm going to pause. That's right, there's more, as I meet up with a winemaker from Skinner Vineyards, who produced a Wine and Spirits magazine Top 100 Wine of the World in 2017, when we continue on the Wine Road in El Dorado County. Thank you for sticking around. Next, we travel on the Wine Road to meet up with Adam Smith, the winemaker at Skinner Vineyards. Adam is a self-described hipster. He totally took me by surprise when we were first talking, and he opened 2 flat cardboard boxes. One had an album, yes, vinyl LP, of jazz trumpeter Chet Baker. Then he opened a box with Neil Young's After the Gold Rush album. Both artists and albums I'm fond of. He got them for his father as a gift, but he too enjoys record albums and those artists. He immediately gained my respect. We started off by talking about the beginnings of Skinner Vineyards, which is one of those head-shaking, eyebrow-furrowing, I can't believe it stories.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. They weren't totally sure what they wanted out of the wine business, other than they liked wine. They were kind of considering looking at vineyards, and they weren't sure where. And it just happened to work out that their son was returning from, ski trip. Yeah, he was up in Tahoe. I think he had a map, and it had the regions of Placerville and Rescue, and discovered a Skinner ranch. In that moment, he kind of thought maybe that there was some family heritage here that they were unaware of. So at that point, they had decided to contact somebody who was maybe an historical docent or whatever, and kind of figure out what the family heritage was. And it was in that they discovered they had deep, deep roots here, and that James Skinner was Mike Skinner, who is the current owner of the brand, 5 generations back. That was his grandfather, and was one of the pioneers of the wine industry here in El Dorado County. And had originally founded the brand in 1861, and they ended up purchasing the original ranch, the original cellar, and now
it was huge too. It got to the point where he was making it was built to handle 15,000 gallons of wine.
Yeah, it was big. It was big for the time, and they were producing brandy as well. So the original brand was called J. Skinner Native Wines and Brandy. Now the original distilleries, that's long gone, but the original wine cellar is still there, and it looks really small now compared to what we have today, but it was a serious thing. And there's actually quite a bit of history documented about the original Skinner brand. So it wasn't until 2006
And quite by chance. It's amazing that they were able to see that just on the road as they were driving with an old map. I guess his wife was, Kevin's wife, Kathy, was a teacher, and she still liked paper maps instead of using Google or something. Mm-hmm. And that's how they saw it. So an amazing coincidence.
Yeah. If you ask the Skinners about it, they believe it's their destiny to do this. And serendipity, it plays a huge role. Sure. And so they followed their hearts on this, and they found the properties and resurrected the label. They even used the original font that was on the old Skinner bottles from back in the day. Nice. So, they really have treated it as like a family legacy. We bought the 20 planted acres up in Fairplay straight away. That was one of the first purchases that were made. And then we were able to get a hold of some of the original Skinner property. So we've got property out in Rescue, in the town of Rescue. And right next door to our Rescue vineyard, we bought the old Wing Ranch, which is kind of another cool historical property. And there's a really neat old barn over there, and we've planted that. So we've got 3 very different ranches now that are producing really interesting results. And we built the winery and the tasting room up at the vineyard in Fairplay, and that's been kind of the most ideal spot for us because it's just the view is majestic, and the vibe up there is really, really just completely El Dorado County, Sierra Foothills. There's just not like nothing else in the world. You feel like you're the only person for miles, and the wines up there are really special. So,
but surprisingly, you're not growing the varieties that a lot of people are growing here. You lean toward more of the Rhone varieties.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah. So according to the records that we've seen, James Skinner back in the day was really was planting Rhone varietals, as well as some California heritage stuff and some kind of random things. Some of that stuff we've tried to preserve, but
some Mission grapes.
We've got Mission. We still have some of the original vines actually out at the original cellar site that we've, we'll see like 3 grapes come off of that a year. We use the Mission to produce a wine called Angelica, which is a fortified wine. Yeah, where we.
I was happy to see you do that.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. It's a new experience for me. From my career background of making Pinot Noir, making a fortified dessert wine from a California heritage grape is a very interesting experience. But we have some of that material, and then we kind of stuck to we're only going to. We're going to try and stick to what James Skinner envisioned for his brand. So what that means is Rhone varietals. We're growing Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Roussanne, Marsanne. We have Grenache Blanc. But we also, according to the records, we follow tradition again on this. There's Trousseau. We have Carignan, Cinsault. We have Viognier, of course. Yeah, I almost forgot. We also have some really weird varietal that we call Petit Boucher, which is a weird hybridized version of Alicante Boucher. And we're one of the only people growing it, and it's pretty fantastic. So there's a lot of neat stuff going on.
And Picpoul Blanc, too. That's another one that's very rare.
Picpoul is a weird one. Yeah, we've got that going on. I mean, hey, if it's esoteric, you name it, we have it. That's the way we're doing it. We're trying to be a brand that actually has presence, national presence and direct-to-consumer presence. So we don't want to necessarily be 100% about just making weird varietals, but actually making wines that are commercially viable. And how can we make wines that really tell the story of not just Skinner, but the El Dorado County AVA? Terroir is special here. So, it's fun to be weird, but it's also really important to the region to make wines that are straightforward and actually tell the story.
Well, your chief financial officer appreciates that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know there's room in the market for Valdegui, and and we could probably make a sparkling Trousseau or something like that if we wanted to.
I read that Mourvèdre is what brought attention to Skinner, but in our pre-interview conversation, he mentioned he'd like to give Grenache a push too.
Yeah. Well, I think that Mourvèdre was a pleasant surprise, I think, for everyone, because it was growing, it was around, and it's always performed well in this region. And when Skinner started producing it, I don't know, just with a more kind of a gentler hand and more classical kind of mindset, instead of trying to be like big and slutty, we wanted to do something that was a little bit more restrained and balanced. And so once Skinner started producing Mourvèdre at that level, that's when we started noticing how deep that wine can actually go. It doesn't have to be this raisiny, overripe, kind of leathery thing, but it can also be very nuanced and complicated. And I'm pretty new to the varietal. I don't go real deep with Mourvèdre. I've worked tons with lots of own varietals, but Mourvèdre's one of those things that's, its resurgence is pretty new. For me, Grenache is the thing out here that is extra special, because I like to think of Grenache as the Sierra Foothills Pinot. It's juicy, and it can be austere. It's a little lighter and leaner. It's just a little bit more, I think, from an alcohol perspective, it's more high octane than Pinot Noir, but it has that kind of refreshing, juicy, food-friendly quality to it. And to me, the Grenaches here are one of the varieties that really impressed me the most in El Dorado County. It seems to be a really good match for the terroir here, and I think that consumers are already appreciate it, and they're going to grow to appreciate it more as something that we do extremely well here. Just mountain grown, high elevation Grenache grown in decomposed granite is just it's a special thing, and there's no other place like this in the country. And so we have this unique opportunity to produce Grenache that nobody else can really produce.
As you heard Kevin Jones mention of Lava Cap, they too are growing Rhone varietals like Grenache, as well as Marsanne and Roussanne. I interviewed Kevin after I spoke with Adam Smith that day. The Rhone varietals are catching on in El Dorado County, and it's working well for them. They're picking up some good scores from Wine Enthusiast, and as I mentioned earlier, Wine and Spirits magazine included them in their top 100 in 2017.
One of the best in the world, in other words, so that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's huge. That all comes down to, I think, the Skinners. We farm our vineyards organically. We pay very, very close attention to our fruit quality. The wine production style here is all native and very gentle handling. When you look at the winery, it is entirely set up to produce Pinot Noir. I mean, it looks like a winery in Burgundy, or in, on the Sonoma coast or something like this. It's open top fermentations, native everything, gentle handling. It's set up to be just very, very thoughtful winemaking. The Skinners are the ones that set that up. They set themselves up for success, really. And it's just because they wanted to respect the fruit that they grow and the brand that they've developed. They wanted to make something that was true to its heritage.
Right. And honored its heritage.
Yeah, it honors it, exactly. So that's what we've done. And the Skinner's vision is very clear. There's no question about it. None of us are wandering around the winery wondering what we should be doing. There is no question what the goal is. They communicate that really, really well. And that's nice, because actually a lot of winery owners don't really know what they want out of the business. They just know they like wine. And they know they like money. And so it comes down to okay, make good wine, make us some money. And it's just there's more to it than that. There's a whole story that has to be built into this. The Skinners already have a story, and so it's a little bit easier. We can kind of just lean into the story and make the best wines we can. And for me, being here, that comes down to also honoring that heritage, because me being here is honoring my heritage as somebody who grew up in El Dorado County. This choice to come back here and be a part of this burgeoning wine community, it was a big step for me. And, for me, the only thing that I can really do at this point is honor my own history here and respect their story. And we're kind of doing it together right now. Yeah.
Adam and I spoke for nearly an hour, and I asked about the great opportunities he had, starting at the highly respected Domaine Serene in Oregon, going to New Zealand for an assistant winemaker position, working with Banshee Wines in Sonoma, and then their new Oregon endeavor, all after his musician and arts career. I don't have time to cover his tales of those ventures, but it all led to this comment from me.
So I have to admit, when I saw your history of where you've been and jumping around the world a little bit in a short amount of time, because you just got started, 2004, you said?
Yeah, 2004.
I thought, this is a guy who is really looking to learn a lot, trying to increase his knowledge, or just can't keep a job. So I'm happy to see that you've done some great work in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I wondered that about myself too. Any change in my resume has just been because there was an offer that was just too cool. I want to keep learning. I want to grow deeper. I don't have that kind of personality that's just wants a good job and just until I'm dead. And for me, it's a pursuit of passion, and so I want to keep learning.
But do you see yourself settling down here at least for a pretty good amount of time?
Yeah. The thing about being here is it was kind of, I think it was kind of always my goal. Even at the onset, once I started getting into wine and started learning more and more, I kept finding myself coming back here and going, how can I apply what I'm learning to the Sierra Foothills? And I just always found myself doing that exercise of, how can I take what I'm learning from making Pinot Noir in Oregon? How can I take what I'm learning from making Syrah in New Zealand or Washington Cab or whatever it was I was doing, kind of playing around with this really, really big palette, seeing how it could all be applied to this place that I called home. And it was always in my head. And so I've been literally looking for this opportunity down here for about half of my career, a little more than that. And I was just shocked when Skinner, who I consider to be the best producer, I think, in the region, or at least among them, I thought, oh, this is a huge honor, and how could I not try this? So I just feel like the opportunities are now endless within kind of where I'm at. Whereas before, I think I was working in places that were very established and very much doing their own thing, and it was just a job that I could learn a lot from. But at a certain point, I hit a ceiling, and then I was like, I'm not learning anymore. I'm just working. I don't want this to ever feel like a 9-to-5. I want this to always be a pursuit of passion that I happen to make a living doing, and I think that will keep the wines fresh and inspired and interesting, and it's very, very satisfying. It is really hard physical labor, and you just have to kind of be able to wear a lot of different hats. I think most people, once they start doing it, they don't want to stop. They never really want to change it up.
Well, I will say this. I think this is a good place to stop, at least with the interview.
Okay.
Because we've been here for quite a while now talking, and I appreciate your time. And, man, I'm happy for you that you've made it back here, and you got a great job and a bright future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to be back, and I think that being an integral part of the El Dorado County wine growing region is a huge opportunity, and I think that there's a new chapter coming for everyone, and so I'm just honored to be a part of it.
I really enjoyed chatting with the hipster Adam Smith of Skinner Vineyards. It will be real interesting to see what he and the Skinners do in the coming years. Visit them in person in the Fairplay, Somerset region of El Dorado County, or find them online at skinnervineyards.com. I hope you enjoyed our travels to the El Dorado AVA. Adam Smith, Chaim and Elisheva, and Kevin Jones are examples of the easygoing, down-to-earth people who work in the wine industry, and it makes my job producing this show so enjoyable. Take a visit to El Dorado County and the Sierra Foothills wine districts. You won't be disappointed. If you're listening to this on iTunes, Stitcher, or another podcast provider, you can find more interviews and interesting content on my website, onthewineroad.com. I'm on Facebook as On the Wine Road and Instagram and Twitter at JD Wine Road. Thank you for your continued support and keeping me company on the Wine Road.